So I was talking about being on ExecuNet. They provide seminars, and they say don't bother applying to ads at all, any of them online,
Right.
because it's a waste of your time. But the only way you're going to get a job is through your social network. Okay. I mean, that's what, so, and I send them messages saying, well, explain that, and they ignore me, you know.
Yeah.
So why is it that they, I mean, your information is slightly different than what
The ExecuNet
they're
says.
saying, you know.
So ExecuNet is saying that you should only search on social networks?
Well, their seminars say that.
Okay.
But that, I mean, that's not what the job site's about.
Right.
But, so, you know, so why have all these, what they really should do is focus on their networking and their recruiting part, right?
Why should you focus?
Well,
I'm trying to get to the
the messages I'm getting is it's like almost a total waste of your time to apply to
social
online-
networks,
No, to apply to ads.
applying to ads.
To Monster Board or,
Right.
or
So
ExecuNet or any of those.
It's a very good thought, and the reason is, suppose you have certain skill sets which are very relevant for the job. The software that screens resumes have become much more sophisticated. So if a person or a company, say Google, is looking for C++ programmers, and your resume reflects projects or skills that are associated with, say, C++, then your resume is most likely to get screened. Now, you want to apply also when you don't know somebody in the company. So say for Google, right, if I don't have any second-degree connection, I don't have any first-degree connection, maybe I have some third-degree connection. I'm trying to connect with those people. All of this takes time, right? So, but you want your resume to be seen because job opportunity is a time bomb, right? It's going to go away as soon as they find somebody. So you want to have your resume in the database. Plus, most of the large companies have a database. So even if you submit your resume through a social network, at a certain point of time, they will ask you to fill in an online application. So you are in the online database. So all the managers can put in their notes. So I used to work, for the companies I worked, they all used Oracle-based candidate management system, right? So after interviews, telephonic interviews, emails, we would dump all of that information into the software, right? So if you don't connect, or if you don't have a connection, and if you have the right skill set, you want to apply online. But in most other cases, it's definitely a waste of time. But if you have time, unemployed, yeah, go for it. Right?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks very much for the great presentation.
Thank you.
Do you recommend that besides conducting your job search, focusing your job search through the social media using LinkedIn, that you also resort to alternative, or how important is it to use alternative social media tools? I'm pretty retro on all this, but in any event, I think I understand. Besides LinkedIn, the premier social media tool, should you also make a point of working through Twitter and Facebook, for example?
Right.
Thanks.
That's a very, very good point. One of my colleagues, Alessandro from Carnegie Mellon, is actually doing a study on Facebook. So how Facebook actually hurts the recruitment process. Now, Facebook is more of a personal social network, right? You can apply or look for jobs most of the time. So people who are looking for jobs using Facebook are artists or actors, right? They would have pictures. So they want to show off their talent, which is more visual. They would resort to Facebook, right? But in most other cases, there's not really much you can do or show on Facebook, say as a programmer, right? Facebook doesn't allow you to submit a code that could be displayed. It doesn't allow you to have sort of your resume. Twitter, on the other hand, shows your expertise in content. So when you tweet messages, your ideas, your thought, it actually gives an idea to recruiters on, yeah, this candidate or this person sounds knowledgeable in specific area, right? You're following some maybe content from, say, big data, right? So you follow big data and you're adding your own thoughts. A recruiter might see, this person is what I'm looking for. This is the thought process I need in the company. Twitter thus plays a role in actually screening in people or screening out, like maybe this person is all over the place, I really don't care. Or this person is so focused on big data, good thoughts, I want to hire him. right? So Twitter allows you to show off your talent more in terms of your thoughts. Facebook is more visual if you have the visual showcase. LinkedIn is essentially your resume, right?
You mentioned that if you have too many connections on LinkedIn, that would possibly signify that you're spreading yourself too thin and that somebody doesn't necessarily need to help you because you can turn elsewhere. How can other members within LinkedIn tell how many connections you have? Because I have like a 500 plus, but if you get a premium LinkedIn membership, does it actually quantify the amount of connections for other viewers, or how does it work?
So very good question. Your friends know how many connections you have. So if they can actually look at your contacts and they can see how many connections you have, they cannot directly connect with them, but it's correct that on your profile page, it only shows 500 plus. So irrespective of how many connections you have beyond 500, it's hidden on just your profile page. People who are your connection have to put in extra effort to see your connections, the actual number. People who you're not connected with, they don't see that. All they see is the 500 plus, right? And all of this information, again, could be controlled. So LinkedIn has options to limit what information is seen by your friends, by yourself, or by the public.
So my question is that I'm currently in a job search, and all my previous experience has been in higher education. I just moved here, so I'm definitely open to higher education, but I also am kind of investigating and researching right now more of the corporate world. So how do I, in that top little header part, like say, yes, I'm still interested in higher ed without the corporate world thinking, she's got a lot of higher ed.
Yeah.
How does that work?
It's a very good point. And actually, I lost a job because I mentioned I was interested in higher ed. So this was when I was doing my master's. I can name the company now, I guess. It's Texas Instruments. They really liked me. Everything was great. And this person says, so you mentioned that you are interested in research. So are you interested in higher ed? I said, yeah, I'm thinking about it. I said, okay, so come back to us when you finish your master's. Higher ed people are not really looking for you on LinkedIn. So there's no point in saying that I'm going to go for higher ed. Focus on the corporate world, because those are the people who are going to look at your profile on LinkedIn, right? And if, say, university is getting applications, nobody really goes to LinkedIn profile and say what you submitted in your application is correct or not, or so forth.
A request to be connected, and you have no idea where this person is from. You see no association with them regarding their background or your background. You're almost afraid to view their profile because then they know that you looked at their profile and you're really not interested. I mean, should you accept?
It's a very valid point. Now, if you think as a job seeker, this person might be good in connecting you with other people, then maybe you want to accept, right? In most cases, somebody is sending you a request. They are new to LinkedIn, and they're just clicking on everybody that LinkedIn is recommending. Right? I mean, you get recommended to them. You're popular, right? So I would avoid, in most cases, if you don't know the person, what's the point in connecting with them, right? Unless this is the CEO of Google or something. Yeah, that's a different story. Right? But in most cases, people who are connecting don't know how to use LinkedIn or are new to LinkedIn. Right? If you look at their profile, if you don't find any value as a job seeker, then there's no point in connecting with them. Right? I personally leave the invitations open. Like I never archive them. I have like 50 connections requests in my LinkedIn account because those are people I don't know how I connect with them.
You ignore them?
I don't do anything. The invitations are sitting there.
One thing I do, I email them and ask them, can you please let me know how we're connected, just refresh my memory? And a lot of times, if they are just spamming people and never get back to you, then you don't feel bad about the citizen.
That's true. That's true too. Yeah. Assuming if you have time.
Okay, so I'm in the process of interviewing for a company right now. I've had 3 rounds of interviews. My question is, if I don't end up getting the job, but I'm still interested in this company, in this field, is it appropriate if I actually like send a friend request on LinkedIn to the people who interviewed me? Because like I've spoken with them and corresponded with them even if I don't get the job, like because maybe in the future.
Right. So connect with them on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I think that's a very, very fair point, and I think you should. The reason is, so when you connect with them on LinkedIn, like it's again sort of a closure with the thank you note, right? So you didn't get a job, but you're saying by sending an invitation request, it's up to them whether they connect or not. But it's up to them about that. But what you're saying is no hard feelings. I understand. Thank you. But let's connect on LinkedIn and let me know if anything comes up in future, right? So in most cases, I would say yes, right?
So most of the conversation so far has been from the assumption that the job seeker is doing the connecting. What portion of this is coming from, say, a recruiter who's trying to fill a position? Are they really using these networks to kind of seek out people that way?
So if I understand the question, should you accept connections if you're a recruiter?
No, I'm kind of asking, in creating job offers and interview offers, are those coming from recruiters actively seeking new people in the network?
How are recruiters using LinkedIn?
How?
Recruiters using LinkedIn?
So, okay, how are recruiters using LinkedIn? Now, LinkedIn sells a recruiter account for $100 a month. What they allow you to do with that recruiter account is search for keywords, skills, or anyone, first, second, third, nth degree person on the LinkedIn who's part of LinkedIn, and see their entire profile. So with the recruiter account, you can see any person and possibly, and there's a limit on how many people you can communicate with or send a message to. So you can do that. And one of our studies with the entrepreneurs, we're actually doing, so Brian, sitting at the back, is doing exactly that thing. So you have a recruiter account, you get a separate page, and you can do whatever you want in terms of search. So you can say, I'm looking for people who have Java expertise who are working for Google, right? It will list all people who are working for Google with Java as a skill set. And you can send a message. I think there's a limit of 10, Brian? 10, or there's some messages, number of messages you can send for free, but then you can pay additional $10 or something to send more messages, right? So that's how most of the recruiters actually find people.
Thank you. So is there a best practices LinkedIn guidebook, like how you go to a career coach and they're like, this is how your resume should look and things like that? I've already gotten some feedback on mine, like my picture's all wrong and stuff like that. But you look at the disparity out there. Some people have like they might be a software engineer, but it reads like they're an executive at the company and stuff like that. And some people like me are just like, I've worked here, So is there like any guidance or do you have any background on that, on like where to go to for best practices on the profile?
It's a very good question. I don't have a good answer for it. I'm sure there's plenty of people who say on web how you should format your profile on LinkedIn. So if I'm a recruiter, I was a hiring manager some time ago, and all I looked for is people who stood out, right? So if you have, say, the regular job titles, company name, and so forth, but everybody has that, right? So what is different about you? Are you really a master of something that I'm looking for? So how do you differentiate yourself from the crowd? That's just my thought. Like, do whatever you like, be creative, as long as you're conveying the right message. But you had a thought on that.
Well, LinkedIn actually has a resource page that's really awesome.
Okay.
So I don't know the name off the top of my head, but they walk you through like how to really build your profile, and so it's a good resource.
All right. So this is on Texas Enterprise, or?
It's on LinkedIn. So
Oh, it's on
LinkedIn
LinkedIn.
has its own
Okay.
resource page, accountability.
Okay. So search for it. So, but I'm sure there's plenty of other pages too.
If you're on LinkedIn, you can be endorsed by your connections. What value do you place on those endorsements? I have my
Can
own.
you speak a little bit?
If you're on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
you can be endorsed for certain skills
Right,
by
right.
your connections. I'm curious to know how you value those endorsements because I have my own opinions about that.
So, it's a very good question. I didn't care about those skills, and all the people we surveyed, talked to, nobody really cares what they have in their skills. I mean, personally, if I survey, so how many of you know what skills you're endorsed for on LinkedIn? Like, do you know every skill you're endorsed for on LinkedIn? Okay, very few, maybe 5% or so. Most people don't know, right? The advantage where that endorsement comes in is within a corporate network. So Accenture, if I remember the firm correctly, they took a LinkedIn sort of a corporate platform and implemented it internally in the organization. So Accenture has consultants who have diverse skill sets. Now, Accenture being a large organization, if there is a person, a project manager, looking for certain people, consultants within the company with certain kind of skills, he can do a skill search and identify those people. That's where it's more useful, right? When we look at the recruiter page, when you're doing the keyword search, the skills again are useful because they do appear in the search results, right? So empirically, we don't have an evidence that they help, but I've seen it working within the company as an organization, like finding people within the company, or on recruiter page as part of the search result. Now, say if I search for Java, I don't have anything else in my Java, in my experiences, but my skill set does say Java. So I'll show up, right? But how does LinkedIn put me on the entire list? When there probably are, say, 1 million people with Java skill set, would I be, because it's only a skill, endorsed skill, would I show up at the bottom? Or if I write it in my job description, will I show it at the bottom or top, right? I don't know for sure.
I'm going to piggyback on that question because there's where you can ask people to endorse you, written endorsement, so it's like a mini reference in there. How important is that? Do they look at that at all?
It's so what we found was there is no impact. We found people who had more recommendations versus less had really, there's no meaning for outcome of that. The reason is, anytime a person recommends, LinkedIn actually nags the other person to write a recommendation back, right? So maybe the recommendations are a result. So say if I have 10 recommendations, maybe those 10 recommendations came because I recommended 10 people. They're not truly honest recommendations by people who submitted the recommendation. Additionally, I screen what recommendations show up on my page and what don't, right? So it's very biased. So and that's our thought on why we saw no evidence or no impact of those recommendations on a job outcome, right?
Yeah, I didn't think it would probably impact how they looked at you. I've actually used it in resumes. I've taken sections of those, what they've said, and put it out like on the top of my resume so they can see what others have said about me without actually being able to contact them. So I've used it differently.
Okay. No, I think that's a very valid thing. Although I would, this is just a personal thought, recommend moving them at the bottom rather than at the top, because most of the software that's read the resumes, because people are not reading. So you can have two resumes, one which is read by humans, one that are read by computers. So the one that's read by computer, you want to keep those things at the bottom so they don't confuse the software. Computers are not that smart.
Thank you. Do you have any data as to the extent to which different industries use social media at all in hiring, and also by occupation as well? The variation
so
you mentioned,
is there
higher
data
education,
on which companies or industries
types,
and jobs use
right.
more
I mean,
social
you
network?
mentioned corporate, and then you mentioned higher ed doesn't. Do you have broader? Can you speak to that question a little more broadly?
So in terms of just hiring, no. There is so far no data that I saw that tells these are the companies who are using LinkedIn or social networks for job search versus these are that don't. That is a very good statistic that somebody needs to come up. That data is not public. Nobody wants to disclose, really, so that I'm looking for people using LinkedIn, right? So if a hiring manager says that I'm looking for people on LinkedIn, he'll get 100, 200, 300 requests to connect with them on LinkedIn, right?
What about public versus private, nonprofit, anything?
It's true, yeah.
You have some laws that are, requiring you to search it.
True. I don't know the data, yeah. I think so far in my study, I haven't seen that data set yet. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.